Well, it began as a peaceful and harmless procession of the most unlikely. Just some young fellas, some called them rich, restaurant-bound, ice-cream-licking urban youths. But in the space of a few days, Kenya's equivalent of the Arab Spring was in the offing, and President William Ruto's administration was surprisingly fighting for dear life. It took the military and goons to stop the unknown. Citizen TV's Ayub Abdikadir looks back at the month of rage and the people behind the rage, the Gen Zs.
Partyless, tribeless, leaderless. They proudly identified themselves by ironically not identifying themselves in the conventional Kenyan tags. They wore the Gen Z identity and distanced themselves from Kenya's political class, who they accused of gross economic mismanagement and with a signature of a revolution, unearthing core governance issues. Tech-savvy, connected, urban and digital, the youthful Kenyans turned the internet into their theatre of planning and the streets their sphere of operation. President William Ruto was confronted with a new threat and a reality. And his administration's major tax bill, the Finance Bill 2024, fund the youth unrest. And there was a gross miscalculation from the state. 10th June 2024 marked the final day of the public participation exercise at the Kenyatta International Convention Center. And the session, chaired by Molo MP Kuria Kimani, saw a continuation of the intense criticism of the bill. A majority of those who made submissions before the committee disagreeing with sections of the proposals.
Our proposal is, Chair, the whole provision is deleted in its entirety. The rationale is the proposed tax offends the principle of taxation in that it is double taxation, considering that the vehicle was paid for tax at purchase and attracts operational taxes through fuel, services, and other consumables.
But if there is one thing, Bwana Chair, that I want to request you, hii mkati tafadhali isiwekwe tax.
8 days later, at the height of the growing anti-tax protests led by the youth, President William Ruto convened a Kenya Kwanza parliamentary group meeting at State House, Nairobi. An inconsequential move as the protests gathered momentum.
We have listened to the view of Kenyans, and we are all in agreement that there are two things that we must do. One of them is that we need to protect Kenyans from increased cost of living, and therefore the proposed 16% VAT on bread has been dropped.
And there was gross underestimation on the extent of the demonstrators and the demonstrations by the House leadership, questioning the capacity of the youth in organizing the demonstrations.
Let me tell my colleagues that we actually, personally, I did not notice that there was even a street protest. Our meeting in State House ended at about 2 p.m. We were not watching news.
From 7 a.m. in the morning?
We didn't know. We didn't notice. That is why I'm telling you, it wasn't panic. It was, whatever was happening in State House was meant to happen, whether there was street protest or not.
Yeah.
Our meeting ended at about 2. And we came straight to Parliament. By the way, the roads were very clear from State House. And then midway at Uhuru Highway, there was a lot of traffic, normal traffic. And I didn't notice. In fact, I watched it in the 9 p.m. news on Citizen. So if you guys say that we really panicked, it was out of pressure, and maybe we changed, we looked for a pen and ink and tried to change things in State House very, very fast because we've seen streets, those are lies.
Wale wengi unaona wakiandamana Nairobi, wameshika simu ya iPhone. Wanajiita Gen Z, wanafika kwa maandamano na Uber, wanatoka maandamano wanaingia KFC kukula kuku na minofu. Hawajui kukosa stima ni kitu gani.
An appeal from the president for talks did not calm their nerves either, and time was ticking towards June 25th.
I am very proud of our young people. They have stepped forward tribeless. They have stepped forward peaceful. And I want to tell them we are going to engage them. We are going to have a conversation so that together we can build a greater nation.
2 days later, the youthful protesters stormed Parliament, where lawmakers dared against their calls for the rejection of the finance bill passed it. The keyboard warriors' overwhelming police breached Parliament's security, forcing lawmakers to scamper for safety in an unprecedented style that inspired wild optimism, pushing Kenya to the cusp of transformation. The demonstrations were spontaneous countrywide, including in the president's hometown city of Eldoret, against punitive tax policies contained in the finance bill, which created disaffection among them for the political class. In Naivasha, Nakuru County, and unbeknown to him, President William Ruto was attending institutional reforms retreat of the African Union. In the evening, he would fly back to a city and a country on the brink. Kenya stood in uncharted territory. Parliament breached by enraged demonstrators, forcing MPs to flee in a style that had similar attributes as the 2010-11 Arab Spring that swept across North Africa. And for the first time in 42 years, the military was deployed in a Gazette notice by then Defence CS Aden Duale to help, according to him, the inundated police whose lines were breached. The nation held its breath, awaiting an address from the president, and in a late evening speech from State House in Nairobi, the president, looking caged, humiliated, and weakened, vowed to crush the demonstrators.
Accordingly, I assure Kenyans that we shall provide a full, effective, and expeditious response to today's treasonous events. Thank you.
And the consequence was immediate. A day later, MPs who voted for the bill resurfaced and flanked the president, denied a money bill, and defeated by a new breed of youthful protesters, whose determination led to major concessions from the government. Stung by the anti-tax demonstrations, the government walked back on major policy pronouncements it had taken, chief among them the rejection of the Finance Bill 2024.
I concede, and therefore I will not sign the 2024 Finance Bill, and it shall subsequently be withdrawn, and I have agreed with these members that that becomes our collective position.
Visibly absent from the State House meeting was Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua, and just after the president's address,
we have a dysfunctional National Intelligence Service that has exposed the president, the government, and the people of Kenya. Had the National Intelligence Service briefed the president 2 months ago about how the people of Kenya feel about the Finance Bill 2024, so many Kenyans would not have died. Property would not have been destroyed. Offices would not have been touched. There would have been no mayhem.
The reverberations of the youthful demonstrations prompted profound changes. Church pulpits were no longer operational for politicians, and the president and his deputies' delegation to churches trimmed. Lawmakers and ministers who displayed opulence adjusted to the new norm, casting images of humble servants of the people. They were redeemed, forced to assume pariah status by protests that denounced the entire political establishment and changed Kenya's course. And they did not stop at that.
I want us to discuss these issues. And it was a suggestion, and I am open. I am hearing that the young people are saying, we don't want a multi-sectoral forum. Maybe we should have an engagement with the president on X. And I am open to having an engagement with the young people on a forum that they are comfortable with.
If they want digital?
If they want me to engage with them on X, I will be there.
I pray for the peace of Kenya, I pray that we shall respect one another.
Still reeling under the defeat of the bill and pushed to a corner, President Ruto met with the youth on X, where core governance issues were brought to light. A solemn afternoon at State House in Nairobi, and knowing he and his government were yet to meet the promise of the moment, President William Ruto sent home his entire cabinet in a solo address, even his aide-de-camp stepping aside.
Upon reflection, listening keenly to what the people of Kenya have said, and after a holistic appraisal of the performance of my cabinet and its achievements and challenges, I have today decided to dismiss with immediate effect all the cabinet secretaries and Attorney General of the Republic of Kenya, of the Cabinet of Kenya, except the Prime Cabinet Secretary and Cabinet Secretary for Secretary and Cabinet Secretary for Foreign Affairs and Diaspora Affairs, and of course, the office of the Deputy President.
Like a thunderbolt from the clear skies, young protesters styling themselves as the Gen Z landed on the Kenyan political space in a manner that defied imagination. In their wake, a raided parliament, a disbanded cabinet, and ultimately, a country that changed forever. Ayub Abdikadir, Citizen TV.